Victoria Hayes pressed the elevator button for the 45th floor, balancing 3 leather portfolios against her chest. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of downtown Chicago, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. For years she had made this journey. For years of arriving before dawn and leaving after dusk. For years of building Pierce Global Industries alongside Nathan Pierce. Though most people would never know her name, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Victoria stepped into the marble lobby, where the company logo gleamed in polished chrome. Pierce Global Industries had grown from a small commercial real estate firm into a multinational powerhouse. Nathan Pierce had the vision and the charisma. Victoria had everything else. She managed his calendar down to the minute, anticipated problems before they materialized, and translated his ambitious ideas into actionable strategies. When success breeds contempt, Nathan was already in the main conference room when Victoria arrived. He stood at the head of the table, reviewing notes on his tablet. At 38, he carried himself with the assurance of someone who had never experienced true failure. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Eyes that could read a balance sheet as easily as they read people. A smile that had charmed investors out of billions. "The Hamilton presentation is ready," Victoria said, setting the portfolios on the table. "I included the alternate financing structures you mentioned last night. The third option might appeal to Gregory's preference for conservative growth." Nathan glanced up briefly. "Good. Make sure everyone has copies before the meeting starts." "No, thank you." No acknowledgement of the fact that Victoria had stayed until midnight, perfecting those presentations. She had learned not to expect recognition. Her satisfaction came from knowing the work was excellent. From seeing Nathan succeed in rooms where million-dollar deals were made or broken, the meeting that changed everything, the board members began arriving at 9. Victoria greeted each one, directing them to their seats and ensuring they had refreshments. Gregory Hamilton arrived last, as he always did. He was 72 years old, with silver hair and a manner that suggested the world should wait for him. Old money from Boston. The kind of investor who could make or break expansion plans with a single phone call. Nathan began his presentation on the proposed acquisition of 3 commercial properties in Seattle. The deal would cost $400 million. The projected returns looked spectacular on paper. Victoria had spent weeks verifying every number, every projection, every contingency. "The market analysis shows consistent growth over the next decade," Nathan explained, gesturing to the charts on the screen. "We're positioned to dominate the Pacific Northwest commercial sector." Gregory raised his hand. "These projections assume stable interest rates and continued economic growth. What happens if we hit a recession in year 3? Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Gregory continued. "I don't see any risk mitigation strategies. No alternative scenarios. This presentation looks impressive, but where's the substance?" Victoria felt the temperature in the room drop. She saw Nathan's jaw tighten, the telltale sign that his temper was rising. She stepped forward smoothly. "Actually, Mr. Hamilton, the risk analysis is in Section 7, Victoria said, her voice calm and professional. "We've modeled 5 different economic scenarios, including recession impacts. I can display those projections on the main screen." Gregory waved his hand dismissively. "I'm not asking you. I'm asking Mr. Pierce." The dismissal stung, but Victoria stepped back. She had learned to accept being invisible in these meetings. Her role was to support, not to shine. The words that broke Jonathan's expression had gone cold. "Everything you need is in the presentation, Gregory. My team has prepared comprehensive analysis." "Your team?" Gregory repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Or did your assistant do all the actual work while you practiced your speech?" Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Victoria felt heat rising in her cheeks. She had worked 80-hour weeks for the past month. She had sacrificed sleep, meals, and any semblance of personal life to make this presentation perfect. But that was her job. That was what executive assistants did. Nathan stood abruptly, his hands pressed flat against the table. Victoria recognized the danger in his posture. This was the moment before the storm. "My assistant does exactly what I pay her to do," Nathan said, each word sharp and deliberate. She follows instructions, compiles data, and executes tasks. Important tasks, certainly, but ultimately replaceable tasks. There are hundreds of qualified assistants in Chicago alone. She's competent at her job, but let's not pretend she's irreplaceable. I can replace her anytime. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. For years dissolved in an instant. For years of loyalty, dedication, and sacrifice reduced to replaceable tasks. For years of believing she was building something meaningful, only to discover she was just another interchangeable part in Nathan's machine. The silence that screamed the meeting concluded 30 minutes later. The board approved the Seattle acquisition, though Gregory remained skeptical. As people filed out, discussing details and next steps, Victoria remained by the window. The city stretched below her, millions of people pursuing their own ambitions. How many of them felt as hollow as she did right now? She heard Nathan's footsteps approaching. After 4 years, she could identify him by sound alone. The confident stride of someone who had just won another battle. "That went well," Nathan said, his voice returning to its normal, assured tone. "Gregory always pushes back, but the numbers don't lie. I need you to prepare a timeline for the acquisition process. Full project breakdown by tomorrow morning." Victoria turned slowly. The conference room was empty now, except for them. Late morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the space where her career had just been reduced to nothing. "No," she said quietly. Nathan blinked. Confusion crossed his features. "What?" I said no. Victoria's voice was steadier now, fueled by something she hadn't felt in years. Anger. Pure, righteous anger. "I'm not preparing the timeline." "Victoria, this isn't a negotiation," Nathan said, his tone sharpening. "It's your job." "My replaceable job," Victoria replied. Something in her voice made Nathan's expression shift. The job that anyone could do. The job that requires no particular skill or dedication. The truth emerges. Nathan's face changed. Realization was dawning. That was a board meeting. "You know how Gregory operates?" I had to shut down his questions. "By throwing me under the bus," Victoria said, taking a step forward. "By reducing 4 years of work to interchangeable tasks?" "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it, Nathan?" She rarely used his first name. The shift from Mr. Pierce felt like crossing a boundary that could never be uncrossed. "Because from where I'm standing, you meant exactly what you said." Nathan ran his hand through his hair, disturbing its perfect style. "You're overreacting, am I?" Victoria's voice rose slightly. "Let me ask you something. Do you remember 3 weeks ago when you had the emergency trip to London? Do you remember who rearranged your entire schedule? Who handled the crisis with the Tokyo office while you were over the Atlantic? Who made sure your sister Rachel got to her medical appointment when she couldn't reach you?" Nathan said nothing. "That was me," Victoria continued. "Every single thing. Do you remember who negotiated with the contractor when the office renovation went over budget? Who found the legal documents your attorney desperately needed at midnight? Who talked to your mother through her concerns about your health when you were too busy to call her back?" She watched emotions cross Nathan's face. Surprise, discomfort, something that might have been guilt. "That was all me, Nathan. And that was just 1 week. 1 week out of the 208 weeks I've worked for you. So here's my question." She met his eyes directly. "If I'm so easy to replace, if anyone could do what I do, then answer me this." "Answer what?" His voice had gone quiet. Victoria felt her heart pounding, but her voice remained steady. "Then explain why you haven't." The weekend passed in a blur of silence and reflection. Victoria spent Saturday morning in her apartment, staring at her laptop without seeing it. Sunday brought rain that matched her mood. She had left the office Friday evening without another word to Nathan. Walking out while he stood frozen in the conference room, her question hanging in the air like smoke that refused to dissipate, Monday morning arrived with cruel punctuality. Victoria dressed in her usual professional attire, a navy blazer and pencil skirt, but everything felt different now. The routine that had defined her life for 4 years suddenly felt like a costume. She was wearing for a performance she no longer believed in. She arrived at the office at 7, earlier than usual. The building was quiet. Just security guards and cleaning crews finishing their night shifts. Victoria rode the elevator to the 45th floor, her reflection staring back at her from the polished metal doors. When had she become this person? When had she allowed her entire identity to revolve around making Nathan Pierce's life easier? The cold distance of professionalism. Victoria settled at her desk, the space she had occupied for 4 years. Every file was organized exactly as she preferred. Every system ran like clockwork. She had built this role into something far beyond what it had been before her arrival. The question now was whether any of it mattered. Nathan arrived at 8:25 minutes later than his usual schedule. Victoria heard his footsteps in the hallway, felt the familiar shift in atmosphere that always announced his presence. He paused at her desk. She could sense his eyes on her, but she kept her gaze fixed firmly on her computer screen. "Good morning," he said. His voice was carefully neutral, testing the waters. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce." Victoria's tone was professionally distant. The formality was deliberate, a wall being reconstructed brick by brick. She heard him exhale slowly. "Victoria, about Friday. We need to discuss what happened. Your schedule is clear until the 10:30 meeting with the marketing department." Victoria interrupted, still not looking at him. "I've prepared all briefing materials. They're on your desk. The contracts from the Seattle acquisition need your signature by noon. Your sister Rachel called. She wants you to return her call before lunch." Another pause. "Longer this time. We need to talk about what I said, do we?" Victoria finally looked up, her expression blank and professional. "You were under pressure. Board meetings are stressful. Sometimes people say things in the heat of the moment." Something flashed across Nathan's face. Hurt, perhaps, or frustration. "I meant every word I said. The part about you not being replaceable." "Then we definitely shouldn't discuss it," Victoria said, returning her attention to the computer. "You have 8 minutes before your first meeting." Nathan stood there for a moment longer, then walked into his office without another word. Victoria released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands trembled slightly beneath the desk. This was going to be harder than she had anticipated. The cracks began to show. The morning progressed with painful politeness. Victoria maintained her professional distance, and Nathan seemed to respect it, though she caught him watching her several times with an expression she could not quite interpret. By noon, the facade was showing cracks. Nathan emerged from his office holding his phone. "Victoria, I need the Johnson file. The one with the property valuations." "Which Johnson file?" "There are 6 active Johnson accounts." Nathan's jaw tightened. "The one we discussed last week." "We discussed 4 different Johnson accounts last week. I need more specific information. Just bring me all of them." Victoria stood, walked to the filing system, and returned with 6 thick folders. She placed them on his desk without comment. Nathan stared at the stack. "This is ridiculous. You know which one I mean?" "Actually, Mr. Pierce, I don't. In the past, you've relied on me to read your mind. But I think we've established that I'm just following instructions and executing replaceable tasks. So I'll need you to be more specific about which file you need." The words hung between them. Nathan's expression shifted from frustration to something that looked like regret. "Commercial property evaluation for the downtown Johnson project," he said quietly. Victoria pulled the correct file from the stack and handed it to him. "This one." The offer that changed everything. At 2 in the afternoon, Victoria's personal cell phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Normally, she would let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Ms. Hayes, this is David Chen from Sterling Dynamics." Victoria's pulse quickened. Sterling Dynamics was Pierce Global Industries' biggest competitor. David Chen was their CEO, a man known for aggressive business tactics and talent acquisition. "Mr. Chen, how did you get my personal number?" "I have extensive networks," he said smoothly. "I'm calling because we've been observing your work at Pierce Global for some time. We're impressed with what you've accomplished. I'd like to offer you a position as Vice President of Strategic Operations. Substantial salary increase, full benefits package, your own team, and equity in the company. Are you interested in hearing more?" Victoria's mind raced. Vice president. It was the kind of position she had dreamed about for years. The recognition she deserved. The career advancement Nathan had always dangled just out of reach through the glass wall of Nathan's office. She could see him on a conference call, animated and commanding. He had no idea that his biggest competitor had just offered his assistant a position that would make her a direct rival. "I'm very interested," Victoria heard herself say. "Please send me the complete details." "Excellent. I'll have my assistant email everything within the hour. One more thing, Miss Hayes. We'd want you to start as soon as possible. I understand you might have contractual obligations, but we're prepared to handle any complications that arise." Victoria understood what he was really saying. Sterling Dynamics would pay any penalty fees if Nathan tried to enforce a non-compete clause. They wanted her badly enough to fight for her. "I'll review the offer carefully," Victoria said. She hung up feeling both exhilarated and guilty. After 4 years of loyalty, was she really considering this? But what loyalty did she owe Nathan after he had publicly dismissed her contributions? The confrontation deepens. The office emptied as evening approached. Victoria stayed late, finishing reports and organizing files. She told herself it was professionalism. But part of her knew she was avoiding going home to her empty apartment where she would have to think about David Chin's offer. She was so focused on her work that she did not notice. Nathan emerged from his office until he was standing at her desk. "Still here," he observed. The quarterly analysis needed to be completed. It could have waited until tomorrow. Victoria saved her document and closed her laptop with deliberate precision. "Is there something you need, Mr. Pierce?" Nathan loosened his tie, a gesture of frustration she had seen countless times. "Stop calling me that. You've called me Nathan for 3 years. Don't start with the formality now." "That was before," Victoria said quietly. "Before what?" "Before you made everything impossible." Nathan moved around her desk, closing the distance between them. "Victoria, I know I handled Friday badly. The comment in the board meeting was wrong. I apologize for that. But I won't apologize for being honest about how I feel." "How you feel doesn't change anything," Victoria said, her voice tight with emotion. "You're still my boss. I'm still your assistant. We still work in an environment where relationships like this are complicated at best and career-ending at worst. Oh, we just ignore it. Pretend I never said anything? That would be the professional thing to do." Nathan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Professional, right? That's what we're supposed to be." He turned away, then back again, agitation clear in every movement. "Do you know what I did this weekend? I tried to imagine what it would be like to come to work and not have you here. To have someone else sitting at that desk, managing my schedule, handling the chaos. And I couldn't do it, Victoria. I literally could not imagine this company, this office, my life, without you in it." "That's dependence, not love," Victoria countered, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "You're confusing necessity with emotion. Am I?" Nathan stepped closer. "Is that why I notice when you change your perfume? Why I know that you drink green tea instead of coffee when you're stressed? Why I deliberately avoid scheduling meetings on Tuesday evenings, because I know that's when you have dinner with your mother?" Victoria felt her breath catch. She had not known he noticed those things, had not allowed herself to believe he paid attention to her as a person rather than as an efficient machine that kept his life running smoothly. "Nathan," she said softly, and the use of his first name felt like surrender. "Even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't change the fundamental problem. You spent 4 years taking me for granted, for years of overlooking me for promotions, for years of treating my contributions as invisible and expected. And then when someone finally acknowledged what I do, you threw me under the bus to protect your ego." "I know," Nathan said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I know I did. And I don't have a good excuse except fear." "Fear of what?" "Fear of this." Nathan gestured between them. "Fear of admitting that somewhere along the way you became more than just someone who works for me. Fear of acknowledging that I look for you in every room I enter, that your opinion matters more to me than the entire board's, that I've been halfway in love with you for at least 2 years and too much of a coward to admit it." The confession hung in the air between them. Victoria felt tears threatening, but she blinked them back. This was Nathan Pierce, the man who built empires and crushed competitors. And he was standing in front of her, vulnerable and honest, for perhaps the first time since she had known him. "I received a job offer today," Victoria said quietly. Nathan's face went pale. "What? Sterling Dynamics?" "Vice President of Strategic Operations. Triple my current salary. My own team. Equity in the company? You're going to take it." It was not a question. Nathan's voice was hollow. "I don't know," Victoria admitted. "But I do know that I can't keep working like this. I can't keep being invisible. I can't keep sacrificing my career for yours. And I can't build a relationship, professional or otherwise, with someone who doesn't value what I bring to the table." Nathan nodded slowly. "What would it take? For you to stay?" Victoria met his eyes. "Respect. Real respect, not just words spoken in private. Acknowledgement of my contributions. A path forward in this company that doesn't involve being your assistant forever. And most importantly, proof that you see me as a partner, not a possession." "I can do that," Nathan said immediately. "Can you?" Victoria picked up her bag, preparing to leave. "Because words are easy, Nathan. You're brilliant with words. You've built an empire on your ability to convince people of things. But I need more than convincing. I need action." She walked toward the elevator, and Nathan did not stop her. As the doors closed, Victoria saw him standing in the empty office, surrounded by the empire they had built together, looking more lost than she had ever seen him. 2 weeks passed like a slow-motion earthquake. Victoria had accepted the position at Sterling Dynamics, giving Nathan the standard 2 weeks' notice, professional, clean, final. Her desk was gradually emptying, personal items disappearing into cardboard boxes. For years of her life packed away like evidence of a crime that had never quite been committed. Nathan had not fought her decision. That was perhaps the most surprising part. He had simply nodded when she submitted her formal resignation letter, his face unreadable. Then he had retreated into his office and closed the door. Through the glass walls, Victoria had watched him sit motionless at his desk for nearly an hour, staring at nothing. The office atmosphere had grown thick with unspoken tension. Other employees sensed something had shifted, though none knew the details. Nathan had hired a temp to begin training as Victoria's replacement. Her name was Jennifer, and she was efficient and pleasant and completely overwhelmed by the complexity of the role she was inheriting. "How do you remember all of this?" Jennifer asked on her third day, staring at the color-coded filing system. "There must be thousands of details." "You learn," Victoria said simply. "Mr. Pierce has specific preferences. You'll figure them out." But even as she said it, Victoria knew it was not true. Some things could not be taught. The intuition that came from 4 years of working alongside someone. The ability to anticipate needs before they were voiced. The understanding of when to push back and when to simply execute. The unraveling. Begins Nathan's first crisis came on Victoria's 12th day of notice. The Seattle acquisition, the deal that had sparked everything, hit an unexpected complication. Environmental reports revealed contamination issues on one of the properties. The seller was threatening to back out. Lawyers were circling. Millions of dollars hung in the balance. Jennifer brought Nathan the files, but she had organized them chronologically instead of by property. Nathan spent 20 minutes searching for the right documents before calling Victoria into his office. "I need the environmental assessment for the 3rd Avenue property," he said. His voice strained. Victoria found it in 30 seconds. She had known exactly where it would be, because she had anticipated this problem. 2 weeks ago, and prepared a complete contingency file, she handed it to Nathan without comment. "Thank you," he said quietly. Then, as she turned to leave, Victoria. She paused at the door. "How did you know I'd need this?" "Because the environmental company we hired has a history of missing subsurface contamination. I flagged it as a potential issue in my initial analysis. The contingency plans are in the blue folder on your left." Nathan stared at the blue folder as if seeing it for the first time. "You've prepared for this?" "I prepare for everything, Nathan. That's what I do." She left before he could respond. But she felt his eyes following her all the way back to her desk. The Sterling. Dynamics difference. Victoria's first day at Sterling Dynamics felt like stepping into an alternate universe. David Chen greeted her personally, introducing her to the executive team as their new vice president of strategic operations. She had her own office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Her own assistant, Thomas, who seemed genuinely eager to support her work. Her own team of 6 analysts who looked at her with respect rather than dismissal. "We've been watching Pierce Global for years," David said during their first strategy meeting. "Nathan Pierce has vision, but his execution has always been inconsistent. We think that inconsistency was actually you providing stability behind the scenes. Now that you're here, we're going to leverage that expertise." Victoria felt a surge of validation she had not experienced in years. Here, she was not invisible. Here, her contributions were not only acknowledged but celebrated. Within 3 days, she had identified inefficiencies in Sterling Dynamics' project management system. Within a week, she had proposed a restructuring that would save the company millions annually. David approved her proposals immediately, impressed by the depth of her analysis. "This is exactly why we wanted you," he said, reviewing her presentation. "Pierce has no idea what he lost."
Ow.
But Victoria thought about Nathan constantly. Against her better judgment, she found herself wondering how he was managing. Whether Jennifer had figured out his scheduling preferences, whether the Seattle deal had been salvaged, whether he thought about her at all. 3 weeks after Victoria left Pierce Global, the annual Chicago Business Leaders Charity Gala took place. It was the social event of the season, where the city's elite gathered to network and compete in displays of generosity. Victoria had attended for the past 3 years as Nathan's assistant, managing logistics and ensuring he connected with the right people this year. She attended as a guest of Sterling Dynamics. Wearing a midnight blue gown that had cost more than a month's salary at her old job, David Chen was her escort, though their relationship was purely professional. He wanted to show off his new acquisition. And Victoria understood the game being played. She saw Nathan the moment she entered the ballroom. He stood near the bar, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo, scanning the crowd with an expression she recognized. He was searching for someone. For her, she realized with a jolt, their eyes met across the room. Nathan went very still. Victoria felt her heart rate accelerate despite her best efforts to remain composed. She had not seen him since her last day at Pierce Global. When she had handed over her final reports and walked out without looking back, David noticed Nathan at the same moment. "Well," he said with a slight smile, "this should be interesting. Shall we go say hello to your former employer?" Victoria wanted to refuse, but professional courtesy demanded acknowledgement. They crossed the ballroom, and Victoria felt every step like walking through deep water. "Nathan," David said smoothly, extending his hand. "Good to see you. I wanted to personally thank you for training Victoria so well. She's been invaluable to Sterling Dynamics." Nathan shook David's hand, but his eyes never left Victoria's face. "I'm sure she has. You should circulate," Victoria said to David, desperate to escape. "Actually, Victoria, could I speak with you?" Nathan's voice was quiet. "Privately. Just for a moment." David raised an eyebrow but nodded. "I'll be at our table." Victoria followed Nathan to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the crowd. Her hands trembled slightly, so she clasped them together. The truth finally spoken. "You look beautiful," Nathan said first. "Different. More confident, thank you. How is Sterling Dynamics treating you?" "Very well. David values my input. I have real authority to make decisions. It's everything I hoped it would be." Nathan nodded, looking down. "I'm glad. You deserve that." He paused, then continued, his voice rougher. "Pierce Global is falling apart without you." Victoria felt a flash of satisfaction followed immediately by guilt. "I'm sure you'll find your rhythm." "No," Nathan said flatly. "I won't. Because you weren't just my assistant, Victoria. You were the foundation everything else was built on. The Seattle deal nearly collapsed. We lost the Martinez contract because Jennifer missed a deadline you would have caught. My sister called me crying last week because I forgot her birthday, again, and I stood in my office yesterday, trying to remember where you kept the vendor contracts. and I realize I have no idea how anything actually works. That's not my problem anymore, Nathan. I know. He met her eyes. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I need you to understand something. You asked me to prove that I saw you as a partner, not a possession. To show respect through actions, not just words. Victoria waited, her heart pounding. I've spent the past 3 weeks restructuring Pierce Global, Nathan continued. I've promoted 3 people from within, including creating a new position, Chief Operating Officer. The job is yours if you want it. Full executive authority. Seat on the board. Equity stake. Your name on the door? Right next to mine. Not as my assistant. As my partner? Victoria felt her breath catch. Nathan, I already have a job. I know. And I'm not asking you to come back as things were. I'm asking you to build something new. Something where your contributions are visible and valued. Something where you have real power to shape the company's direction. He stepped closer. But more than that, I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove I've changed. That I've learned what matters. You humiliated me, Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. In front of the entire board, you reduced 4 years of work to nothing. I did, Nathan agreed, his voice heavy with regret. And I can't take that back. But I can spend every day moving forward, proving I understand your worth. Not just professionally, but personally. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him. Nathan Pierce, who had built an empire through sheer will and intelligence, was standing before her stripped of pretense. The vulnerability in his eyes was real. Why now? She asked. Why did it take losing me to figure this out? Nathan smiled sadly. Because I'm an arrogant fool who thought he had everything figured out. Because I was terrified of needing someone. Because I convinced myself that if I acknowledged how essential you were, it would make me weak. He reached out, then stopped, his hand falling to his side. Losing you taught me that real strength isn't about being self-sufficient. It's about recognizing the people who make you better and fighting to keep them in your life. The choice that defines everything Victoria felt, tears threatening. For years of unacknowledged work, for years of being invisible. And now, finally, the recognition she had always deserved. But was it enough? I've built something at Sterling Dynamics, she said quietly. In 3 weeks, I've accomplished more than I did in 4 years at Pierce Global. People respect me there. My voice matters. Your voice always mattered, Nathan said. I was just too blind to show you that. But I'm not asking you to give up what you've built. I'm asking you to consider building something even better. With me. As equals, Victoria looked across the ballroom at David Chen, who was watching them with calculated interest. Sterling Dynamics was good. The job was everything she had hoped for. But it was not home. And despite everything, despite the hurt and anger and disappointment, Pierce Global still felt like home. If I come back, Victoria said slowly, things would be different. Completely different, I know. I would have real authority. Real power to make decisions. Absolutely. And you would publicly acknowledge my contributions. No more being invisible. Your name will be on every major project. Victoria studied his face, looking for any sign of deception or manipulation. But Nathan's expression was open, honest in a way she had rarely seen. What about us? She asked quietly. What about what you said? About being halfway in love with me? Nathan's expression softened. I was wrong about that. Victoria felt her heart sink. I'm not halfway in love with you, Victoria. I'm completely, terrifyingly, all the way in love with you. Have been for longer than I want to admit. And whether you come back to Pierce Global or not, whether you give me a chance personally or not, that won't change. But I'm hoping you might consider both. Professional partnership and personal relationship. Built on respect and equality and honesty, Victoria felt tears spilling over now. For years of invisible work, for years of unacknowledged love on both sides, for years of building something neither of them had been brave enough to name. I need time, she said finally. I need to think about this. Take all the time you need, Nathan said. I'll be waiting. However long it takes. Victoria nodded, then turned to leave, but she paused, looking back at him. Nathan. Yes. For what it's worth, I think you might be replaceable after all. She saw his face fall. Then she smiled slightly. Because the Nathan Pierce I worked for would never have had the courage to say what you just said. He would never have admitted weakness or offered true partnership. So maybe the old Nathan is replaceable. And maybe I'd like to get to know the new one. 6 months later, the sign on the door read Pierce Global Industries, Nathan Pierce. CEO and Victoria Hayes, coup. Inside the office, Victoria reviewed the quarterly reports while Nathan took calls from Tokyo. They had rebuilt the company from the ground up, implementing systems that valued transparency and collaboration. Jennifer had become Victoria's assistant, learning from the best. The relationship between Nathan and Victoria had grown slowly, carefully. They had gone to dinner, then coffee, then real dates where they talked about things beyond business. They had learned to be partners in every sense of the word. The Tokyo deal is confirmed, Nathan said, hanging up. He walked to Victoria's desk and kissed the top of her head, a gesture that had become natural over months. Excellent. That puts us ahead of Sterling Dynamics for the quarter. To your strategy. Nathan pulled up a chair beside her. David Chen called me yesterday, asked if I'd be willing to sell. What did you tell him? Nathan smiled. I told him that some things are irreplaceable, and I've finally learned to recognize them. Victoria reached for his hand, lacing their fingers together. For years of invisible work, 6 months of rebuilding trust, a lifetime of possibilities ahead. I can replace you any time, she said teasingly. Echoing the words that had started everything, Nathan laughed, pulling her close. Try it. I dare you. And Victoria realized that being replaceable was never the point. The point was being valued, being seen, being loved for exactly who you were. She had found all of that, not by staying invisible, but by demanding to be recognized. The city of Chicago sparkled beyond the windows, full of ambition and possibility. And inside Pierce Global Industries, two people who had almost lost everything had finally found what mattered most: